In this video, I will talk about the most unique character in anime. Meruem is known for his intellect, character, and strength, but how do we misunderstand him so badly? I will be investigating what motivates him and what differentiates him from all other villains in fiction. I want you to think about how the writer of Hunter x Hunter uses Meruem to ask what it means to be human. His story starts when he was first born and forced his way out of his mother and killed her. He knew he was superior and disrespected anyone who annoyed him. He thought he was an untouchable king who would rule the world. He even had 3 royal guards in Yuppie, Pito, and Poof. He asked for food and they gave it to him, but he didn't like it at all. And he said every now and again he'd find a food that would be most delightful to him. And then Pito points out to him that this was probably rares. And he says that after he was born he just wanted Nen and his body craved for it. And that, quote, a longing that consumed him. This shows how he's driven by instinct and not thought. And he doesn't really have any morals and just cares about wanting something that's good for him. Because he thinks he's stronger and his needs should be more important due to his strength, and that his value is assigned to strength only and nothing else. He goes to a small farmer's village and kills 2 of the farmers who were there, and they instantly die and don't defend themselves. And he asks, why don't they defend themselves? Why don't they do anything about it? The truth is because they can't, and they're not strong enough. And he knows that if he kills a kid, he won't be tasty, and he knows that won't be the case, but he still kills their daughter even though he knows they won't be tasty, and he knew they weren't rares. Pito says that Meruem can easily identify rares by using his ability to sense them, and then Meruem almost tries to kill Pito for advising him to do such a thing, because he says it isn't just about consuming and finding it that's entertaining, it's the moments before he kills a human and he's not sure if they're rare or not. This is the equivalent to humans killing animals, and just killing them for the fun of it, even if they know the food isn't going to be good, and just for the fun of wanting to kill and wanting the thrill. This shows how he doesn't even care about the food itself, but it's just about the thrill of knowing if it's rare or not, knowing if he's going to get the satisfaction out of it. As the king's passing by, he sees a castle, and due to his entitlement, he claims it as his, and knows he can kill anyone inside if they deny them. Meruem meets someone by the name of Ming Jal Ik, who tries to control and order him around. He's confused because this man has no aura, and wonders how someone so weak can become a leader. He learns that humans choose leaders through things like popularity, money, or bloodline, instead of strength. This makes him think that humans are irrational and need control, because why would he pick a leader off something that isn't strength? When the dictator's companions beg for their lives, Meruem mocks them by saying,
I want you to think as hard as those puny brains of yours can manage. Have you ever spared a pig or a cow because it begged you for its life?
He compares a superior life form to humans, to killing them, and that would be okay because we do the same to pigs or cows because we see them as inferior. He says this is fair because we do the same to them, he can do the same to us since he is stronger. And the only justification would be if we think because we have a consciousness that would be okay then, because we can actually comprehend more and we have more intelligence. In reality, in this moment, he thinks he's justified and he thinks he's fair due to this fact, and he thinks that he can kill any human he wants to because that would be fair and that would be just, because since we do the same. But he doesn't really care about justice, he doesn't care about morality. He just wants to kill and become stronger and do whatever he needs to, and he knows with his strength he can do whatever he wants to and nobody can stop him. He doesn't care about anything, he just cares about what he wants. To summarize, here are the main things that we understand about Meruem up to this point. We understand that he thinks very little of humans, and he thinks that they're stupid and weak, and that they need to be controlled because they're irrational, and they've been ruling the world but they aren't fit to do it, so he has to come in and do it instead. We also learn that he thinks that strength is everything, and because he's the strongest he should have everything, and that because he's strong he should be able to do whatever he wants to at his whim, and that everyone around him should follow him and let him rule, because he's the strongest and only the strong should survive. And he's the strongest because he's a chimera ant. But what is a chimera ant? A chimera ant is an organism that consumes other organisms and inherits their traits. We can see this because Meruem is a collection of a bunch of humans that are put together, and even humans with Nen. This is why he's the strongest of all the other chimera ants, and some are made through bees and animals, and this makes them weaker. His royal guard is made up 1 or 2 of the human, and that creates a smaller but more powerful chimera ant. Meruem has an ability called Nen synthesizing, which allows him to take the traits of anything that he eats or consumes. This is why when we always see him consume what he eats, he picks up the traits that they picked up and all their strengths. An important thing to note is that one of the chimera ants in which we see their backstory as a small kid, we see that he had very high morals, and that this also translated him as a chimera ant, and that they had similar character traits as well. Meruem's a collection of a bunch of humans, so in a similar sense, he'd be the culmination of what a human is supposed to be, because he's a culmination of a bunch of humans' lives together, and what humans actually are. And as he's just born, he tries to learn about the world, and tries to figure them out, and talks as humans as bad things, but he's a collection of humans, not physical, but mental state. And that's why he knows English and why he's so strong. Now back to the present. His plan is to get the dictator to bring all his citizens into one place for either food, soldiers, or anything else, And while he waits, he's studying human history, he's playing strategy games, and mastering anything. He brings the citizens who are masters at a craft at a game such as chess, shogi, or anything else, and he wins all of them just by reading the rulebook, and after 1 or 2 games he'll win. Then he meets someone called Komugi, who isn't like any other human because he finally loses, and he's struggling to win. Komugi is a very clumsy person, and Meruem told him to shut his mouth, and because his nose was clogged he couldn't even breathe, but he was a master of the game. Because of this, they spend a lot of time with each other. Komugi is constantly being respectful, constantly being humble, and doesn't show any greed or any of the sins that other humans have said, and he doesn't think that this human is stupid or anything like that due to him being able to win the board game so much. Komugi slowly becomes the only person that Meruem actually listens to, and his whole strategy is about breaking someone's rhythm, and after you break the rhythm, you basically just win the game flat out. At the start he tries to win the game, but instead he grows emotionally, because he learns to respect a human, and he doesn't just think that they're stupid, and even goes as far to use his arm to bet as a cheap trick. He uses this to get Komugi off a rhythm he thinks that he would have lost if he just played normally. And then Komugi says, "I'll bet with my life," which shows her conviction, and this really changes Meruem's perspective on humans, because he sees that not all of them are all bad, or not all of them are stupid, and there's at least one human that can actually be worth something and he actually respects. Komugi explains her family situation and says that she would kill herself if she ever lost, and little did she know that this is a Nen binding vow, which basically means that if you make a promise with Nen, you have to complete it under any condition, and you make it a lot more likely that it'll come true. This is similar to when Karapika made a Nen binding vow that he'll use his Nen only against the Phantom Troop, and which made it a lot stronger. Meruem realizes that not all humans are driven by fear or passion. Meruem then tries to appeal to Komugi's greed and says, "If you could have anything in the world, what would you want?" But Komugi just wants another game, because he's the only one that actually challenged her this much, and makes her think that she can actually have a really good fight. Meruem then takes his arm because he's shown greater character development, because he's realized that he has to use underhanded tactics against a human we once thought was food. He also takes off his arm because of the shame, because he knew that he needed to kind of mess her up with something that's not actually the game, instead of just beating her flat out because of ability. Meruem demands that Komugi plays more, but Komugi says, "I won't play until you actually get yourself treated." And Meruem actually listens to a human for the first time and gets himself healed before starting the game. This is the first person he's ever respected or listens to, and this shows that maybe not all humans are bad, and this changes his whole perspective on what humans can be. He says they'll keep playing until he wins, but ends up breaking this rule because Komugi's exhausted, or at least that's what he thinks. But in reality, she just wants to write down the moves of all the games that they've had, because they were such good games, and she just wanted to make sure that she could remember them all so she could study them later. He doesn't break the rule out of pride, but out of sportsmanship, and not ego. He wants to make sure that it's a fair fight, and he beats her fair and square. Komugi realizes that some humans are driven by passion and not just fear and greed. A lot of humans are sinners in this world, and he thinks that all of them are this way, but now that he met Komugi, he realizes that some people are driven by passion and what actually drives them to be better and drives them to be a master at their craft. He finally asks for Komugi's name as a sign of respect, because they know each other to that degree now. Komugi asks for his name and he doesn't know it, and this makes him really want to know. This shows how fast he's matured, only a few days or few weeks, and his lack of identity, and he only learns outwardly about the world and human history and what other people are, but he doesn't really think who or what is he, and what's his identity. He's never thought of who he is, he's just known as the king, just someone who's all powerful. But what does it mean mentally? Who is he as a person? He doesn't even know his own name, which is the symbol of identity and who you are as a person. But he's never thought of who is he personally, who is he as a person. As the selection draws closer, Meruem realizes that Komugi won't survive the selection, and he goes to kill her out of mercy, and ends up saving her because she was getting killed by a hawk instead. The hawk was attacking her and she just didn't even defend herself, scream for help, or do anything. And then she says that she didn't want to disturb anyone, even though she was about to die. And then Meruem says, "You're an important guest," without thinking, just kills the hawk. This shows that he understands that strength is used to protect others, and he's slowly realizing that there are people that they should be protecting, instead of just using strength, and strength being everything. This is a key moment where he thinks that power isn't just about ruling or killing, but it's about shielding people who can't defend themselves, but have skills in other ways. For example, Komugi's really good at board games, and that's a really important skill to have, and people that aren't strong might have other things that might be good about them. And he learns from Komugi from all people, not a soldier or an ant, but just a normal person. And this makes him think that maybe not all humans are bad, and maybe some are good, and there would have to be a screening process to try to figure out who should be saved and who shouldn't. The big fight begins, where Netero attacks, and the first thing in Meruem's mind, even with everything going on and people attacking, Meruem's first thing he wants to check is to make sure that Komugi's safe and Komugi's alright, because things attacked the roof of her building and fell down on it. This shows how he prioritizes the people who are powerless and the people who need care and people who need to be protected. When he separates him and Netero to a far-off location, everyone expects them to fight, but instead, he initially wants to resolve the issue with a peaceful solution instead of something violent. Netero instead is the one who actually wants to fight and wants to use extreme violence. Meruem's goal is to create a world without invisible social divisions, such as rich and poor, and strong and weak, and those don't exist. He sees that in the world there are people who are very wealthy and people who have everything in the world, and there are people who are poor living across the road. This shows how he wants to make sure that everything's fair and everyone is safe. He even says the idea of inequality won't exist in his world. And this is childish because he thinks that fear must be used in order to create peace. And he said it'll only create terror if need be and as a last resort. Obviously, he thinks he'll need to use terror because there's some people who won't want to give up all the power they have, but he'll only use it when absolutely necessary. He wants to protect the weak that deserve to live and actually have a purpose and can provide things to the world. He says the power shouldn't be used to torment the defeated. And then he says, I will not fight with Netero, because he thinks he's stronger and he can make the decision. And he says he wants to discuss a way that in which they can prevent war and anything else from now on. Netero says that he's wavering between being a human and a chimera ant, and he hasn't realized that those sides are completely incompatible, and as neither side is dominant to one another, they'll fall. And in this confrontation, he's basically just saying that a chimera ant is basically driven off instinct. As at the start we see him as a chimera ant, we see that he basically just wants to kill for no reason, and he just thinks that power is everything, and goes off instinct to try to kill and take what's his. But as he goes to more of a human, he grows to be more compassionate and grows as a person. This shows a major contrast with him at the start, and shows that as he goes on and as he lives longer with Komugi, he begins to think more like a human instead of a chimera ant. Netero then goes on to say that you should never underestimate the bottomless malice in the human heart. This is in their confrontation as he's about to use his final move to kill him, and as Meruem, in the other way, is trying to find a peaceful solution, Netero even says he might reconsider his options if he listens to Meruem any longer. And Netero doesn't even want to negotiate or even want to talk to him about finding another solution. This shows how there's kind of a difference between who the monster is and who the human is. Even though Meruem's the actual monster, he's acting more human than Netero actually is. Or humans actually moral and more likely to cause harm. What he means by this quote, to never underestimate the bottomless malice in the human heart, is that humans are capable of cruelty and evil, even if they appear weak and peaceful. Netero essentially says that don't assume all humans are predictable, fair, or harmless, because they're capable of doing anything. And the bottomless malice refers to the capability of humans to do immoral and destructive things that you wouldn't even think that humans could do. He uses this as he brings off his last attack, which is purely out of hatred, to basically kill Netero, as well as killing Meruem, so that they both couldn't live. He realizes that the humans aren't as complex as they thought, not just food, not just weak, or not just emotional or passionate. He realizes that they can also be terrifying and very strong, and whatever they put their mind to they can do. We see this theme of humans being monsters and what's the line. We see this a lot. We see this in Netero, as I just said. We see this in Meruem as he becomes more human, but we also see this in Gon, the main character. He follows an inverted path to Meruem and kind of acts as his foe. At the start, he seems to be the human, while Meruem's just the monster. But as the story goes on, Gon is filled with hatred and just decides to kill him. But this raises the question, is being human the morally right one, and being the one who's actually just? Or is being human actually just very evil, and means that humans can be capable of very sinful things, and it's more human to be more sinful and filled with malice, and that's what being a human actually is? Or is being a human more like Meruem's turning into, a very compassionate person? I think as humans would like to be the more passionate side, but in reality, if you look at history from an outwards perspective, as Meruem did growing as a person and instantly having knowledge, just kind of learning about the outside very fast, it seems that humans might be just more sinful and a lot more capable of harm than actually compassionate as Meruem grows to be, learning from everyone's mistakes. Meruem ends up having to be reborn and loses memory over what happened. Meruem survives but almost loses all his memories over the past days. He knows that something's missing, but he can't identify it. This shows that he has a moral compass of something that's emerging even without his memory. But at the start, before, when he was just born, he'd just be thinking about his power and himself. But now, even though he lost his memories, he still thinks of other people and the weaker that he needs to protect. And it's almost a moral obligation that he has now, where he needs to protect those around him. Instead of just before, how he just wanted to kill and only worry about his strength. Now, even though he lost his memories, he's still thinking about other people, even though he doesn't know they exist. It's really interesting they made him lose his memory, because we see even in the same interactions he acts very differently, due to the almost subconscious things he picked up as he grew as a person. There's a moment where the wolf soldier says, "My king is Gyro," and instead of killing him or asserting dominance, he wishes Gyro to find his way and that they meet each other. This shows how his genuine empathy and care for others in this agency. Instead of before just wanting to kill and say he's the best, even though he doesn't remember any of these moments that grew him as a person, he still grows as a person to grow compassionate. As he grows to his last moments and realizes that the bomb will kill him, he requests Komugi to call his name. And in the end, the last thing he wanted wasn't more power or to kill people who killed him and his friends. His request is to be called by his name by Komugi, the one person who he truly knew was compassionate. The one person he truly knew wants to call his name and play one last game of Gongi. Komugi agrees and says that he's more than just a monster. He's an actual person. And in the death, it wasn't in one dramatic final battle. It was in a quiet game just alone in a building. And he dies peacefully, holding on to the human bond he cultivated throughout his life. His death wasn't about glory, but it's about fulfillment and connection, and what's actually important. I think that this shows that strength was never what made Meruem human. It was his compassion and his attachment and empathy and care to the people around him. The experience of connection with another human being in Komugi is what defines humanity. This stark contrast Gon, who loses himself into rage and doesn't become human at the end, and almost a killing power that almost hospitalizes him and kills him. I think that the final message is that strength isn't about connection, but about what makes people human. And that even though we can be evil and things like that, when we think about what makes us more human, it talks about the compassion and the connections we make with each other that makes us what's real. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video. I have another one about the secret to why you wouldn't like watching anime for either you or inviting a friend to watch anime. And then I have another video about Gojo and Geto and the relationship that they had in the story Jujutsu Kaisen. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you another time.